Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of MC 305. You guys are doing excellent on your work so far. I just want to encourage you that I'm really proud of all of the work you're doing. I know this online format is new to many of you, but so far I've been very pleased with what I'm seeing. So keep up the good work. This video is going to be going over chapter 2, part 3, which is going to be on the FAJA points. I honestly don't know if it's really called that or not. This is the first time that I've heard the FAJA points being used within a textbook, and yet it is a great acronym to describe 4 main styles of media writing, and so we are going to use it within this class. However, please know that I don't believe this is an industry term, and I may be completely making up how to say this acronym, but that's how we'll refer to it in class. So the FAJA points are important because it helps give us a writing approach that allows us to plan what our format needs to look like. So it helps us to overcome some of our writing apprehension and self-efficacy by providing a format and a planning guide when we're thinking about what we want our message to really look like. Now, the FAJA points are pretty simple, and they go over the 4 basic types of media writing. The first is simple facts, followed by detailed analysis. The third is judgment, and the fourth is action. Simple facts is what we know as basic journalism. This is when you're just using the facts, the dragnet, just the facts, ma'am. And it really relies on the 5 W's and an H. If you haven't heard this used in previous journalism classes, that's who, what, where, when, why, and how. It's all of the facts about what happened, who's involved, and when did it occur. So you're really asking yourself, what happened? And how can I communicate what happened to the public? Is there a problem or issue that needs to be addressed? How did it begin? And what are its causes? So it's pretty basic writing. However, that doesn't mean it's easy writing, as we've talked about before. But it's a real reliance on objective and measurable facts. You can see the example that I'm going to be using throughout the class today is the NBA allowing some of their arenas to be used as polling sites. And so this pretty basic story provides some of the simple facts about what happened, who was involved, what the problem was, how it was being addressed, and why they're doing it. So this is a great example of a simple facts journalism story. Then you have an analysis of facts. Of course, an analysis of facts is also going to use simple facts, but it just builds on it. So while the previous story just kind of listed 3 basic facts about this arena allowance for polling sites, this NPR story goes into more detail and analysis of the larger issues at hand and why having more polling sites available, particularly those that might get people interested in voting, is important to the 2020 election. You can see there's lots of links to other stories to show how this issue is connected to other events that have happened previously or in the future, as well as other controversies such as the voting by mail controversy that's currently going on. So an analysis of facts does still rely on facts. However, you're delving deeper into the issue. What kind of problem or issue is this? What are the links to broader issues that need to be discussed? What are the pieces of it? How are they related? And who are the experts to support this analysis? You also want to make sure that your writing is balanced with an analysis because you're not making judgment. You're not providing an opinion. So if you use an expert that supports the analysis, you also need to find one that rejects it. The third type of media writing is judgment writing, and this is when you bring in opinions and judgments into your piece. So a judgment is going to tell you what's negative, positive, or neutral about the situation. You're making a judgment about how this event or circumstance should be interpreted. You need to discuss how serious the situation or issue is, how it affects people, and what standards should be used to judge its effects. So if we're saying that this initiative is going to be successful, what are the key indicators of that success in your opinion, in your judgment? So you can see two examples here, and I'm not saying that either of these opinions are correct or incorrect. I'm just providing them as examples of media writing. You first have Clay Travis, who claims that NBA players themselves are not registered to vote and therefore should not be involved in lecturing people about politics. While you have a politician who is saying that this is a sign of success, that the boycotts during the playoffs were a successful attempt to get the NBA more involved in issues of racial justice and social justice within our countries through the addition of their arenas as voting places. So you can see that we have two conflicting judgments here, and yet they're both still using the same principles of writing in order to convey those conflicting opinions. The final FAJA point is going to be action, and this takes that judgment one step further. Instead of just having an opinion on something, you're asking the audience to actually act upon that opinion and do something about it. So you would say, why should the action be taken? So you're going to provide explanation for the judgment as well as how this action can help. What kinds of actions should be taken? So you should provide some very specific ways that the audience can take that action. Who should take the action? So you typically don't want every single person to take the action. You want only specific people to do it. And then when should that action occur? So you can see this is from the campaign that LeBron James has started to get people involved as encouraging people to get out and vote for 2020. And you can see just from the very basic website that he is saying that people should register to vote. And when should they do it? They should do it now. How can they do that? They can check their voter registration status there on the bottom. He's also asking them to stay informed through signing up for a newsletter. So that's a separate action that he's writing about. And so you can see that this involves the audience moving from pure judgment to actually doing something about that judgment. Now, the FAJA points are important because they outline the different types of media writing that we use. The first two FAJA points, the facts and the analysis, are typically used within journalism. The first, basic facts, are used in straight news stories. So this is typically what you'll see in broadcast as well as kind of like headline reporting within print or digital. We see a lot of straight news also in social media journalism, and because of space not allowing for opinion news, right? But we have to know the difference between straight fact news and analysis news, right? Because analysis involves more time, it involves more work. You have to have a balancing of expertise and opinions from sources. So these are primarily objective. It's just the level of in-depth coverage that we're seeing within the journalism pieces that really distinguish them. Meanwhile, the last two FAJA points, the J and the A, judgment and action, really come from persuasion writing, which is public relations and advertising. Most of public relations is about asking people to make judgments about a brand, a company, an event, a policy that's going on. And so public relations really heavily involves this J part. Although I do argue that most public relations also want you to take an action. For instance, in working in nonprofit news, I may tell you my judgment about this policy, but if all I'm doing is telling you the judgment and I'm not asking you to, call your representative or to vote a certain way, then it's probably not going to be a very effective public relations campaign because no action will be done to change what I think is an issue. The same is true in advertising. You're really first asking people to make a judgment that your product is good, but the primary objective for advertising is, of course, action, which typically involves consumers buying things. So you can see how the four different types of media professions use these different FAJA points differently. The problem is when you start seeing crossover, because we certainly see news that contains judgment or action calls in it. And of course, some persuasion involves using facts and analysis, but if it doesn't come with the opinion and a call to action, then it's not super effective as persuasion. So it's helpful to look through these FAJA points, all 4 of them, regardless of what type of media you're writing, in order to understand the effectiveness of your writing overall. FAJA points are connected to the SAM style of writing as well. As you're thinking about the situation and audience, and as you're writing to those 2 aspects, your message should reflect some aspect of fact, analysis, judgment, and action, and maybe even all 4, depending upon the goals of your message. So as you're considering what your message goals are, you use FAJA to kind of think about how that message should be constructed. So now that you have a better understanding of these elements, I want you to go ahead and do the discussion post on the FAJA points. I then have a second critique assignment for you based on these FAJA points. You can read chapter 3 on media writing style and language conventions. Please know that this is a long chapter, but you can kind of skim through a lot of the writing on AP Stylebook, because we're going to be going over that within our AP Stylebook lessons. Speaking of which, we'll be covering punctuation. Make sure you go to the punctuation section that is behind the original entries. So for instance, in my AP Stylebook, it's about 320 pages in, and it's an entire section. I don't expect you to remember all of the rules for the punctuation section. Just get a good understanding before you watch the AP punctuation video and do the homework later.